Retro.
What's up, guys? This is Daniel Logan, Boba Fett from Attack of the Clones, The Clone Wars, Book of Boba, Skywalker Saga game, and hopefully many more things in the Star Wars galaxy. You are listening to Jay and Dennis on Podcast Stardust. Yep, this is the way I've spoken.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's a holiday Monday here in the States, and we are going to celebrate it by discussing another episode of The Clone Wars. But before we get into the festivities, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are?
Yeah, so while you're throwing those Zillo steaks on the grill, you can hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. Sorry, too soon?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're pretty tough, so we'll have to throw some caution with that. But the dish is aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. As Jay just teased, we're going to be discussing episode 19 from season 2 of the Clone Wars, which is called The Zillo Beast Strikes Back. And if I haven't got the point across, happy Labor Day to everyone here in the States. Hope you're having a good day celebrating. Relax, do something fun, and thanks for taking us with you. But Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of this episode before we get into our discussion?
Sure thing, Dennis. In accordance with Chancellor Palpatine's wishes, Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker bring the Zillo Beast back to Coruscant so that the Republic might learn the secret of its nearly indestructible hide. Dr. Bull is unable to remove its scales, though, and Palpatine orders the Zillo Beast be killed to aid the process. When Dr. Bull attempts to administer a toxin made from Malastarian fuel, this only enrages the Zillo, and it escapes and goes on a rampage through Coruscant. Unable to contain or subdue the beast, the Republic resorts to killing it with a large dose of the toxin.
Yeah, another classic episode of the Clone Wars. Before we get into some detailed discussion here, what were your overall thoughts about this episode?
Well, once again, I mean, it's a cautionary tale in a lot of ways, and we've got a lot of homages to some other types of classic films and whatnot. But it really does, once again, examine a lot of ethical dilemmas and also, how far Palpatine is willing to go just to prove his own point. And, some of the other things that the other Jedi are also dealing with as well, as far as Mace Windu is concerned. And very brutal. I mean, again, you alluded to some of the classic things in the last episode, such as Godzilla and King Kong and those types of things. And that definitely resonates in this episode as well. But what do you think?
Yeah. This episode is interesting because as much as the last one was really a Godzilla story, right down to the clones having Godzilla inspired markings on their helmets and names for that matter. This one shifts a bit more to the King Kong aspect of stuff because you brought the beast to civilization, and of course in King Kong it was to show it off and make a spectacle of it, and then it goes after the girl it's fallen in love with. In this case, they want to make a weapon with it, and the Zillo Beast rebels against the ringleader of all this and pursues them across the planet, leaving destruction in its wake. All that. It's a fun episode. I really like it. It's got a very condensed story. And, I could see this being, you could make an entire movie out of this concept if you wanted, with them running from the Zillo Beast and then, seeking shelter and then figuring out how to deal with it. And then really getting into the tragedy of the whole thing at the end. And, but it worked well in the 22 minutes of screen time that this actually took to tell the story. And I like it quite a bit. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into some of the details here. Right off the bat, the Zillo Beast gets delivered to Coruscant, and there is another one of these friendly veiled dislike type of discussions between Mace and Chancellor Palpatine about this, where basically it's a bad idea that brought it here, and he's just kind of hoping that Palpatine's going to come to his senses. But what did you observe between Palpatine and Mace Windu?
Well, I mean, Mace was against this from the start because, I mean, obviously bringing this beast to Coruscant where there's, multi-millions of people is probably not the best idea anyways. And there's always that little bit to Mace where he can sort of see, we talked about like the shatter points before and how things end up happening, perhaps. Not that he can see the future, but I think he knows that there's just something about Palpatine that is just enough of an off feeling that, again, that's kind of harkening forward and foreshadowing to his inability to really trust Palpatine in the future. And this shows how ruthless, honestly, I mean, I think he was ruthless in this particular episode and not even taking into account the fact that this beast could be A, potentially sentient, and B, just the fact that it's the last of its kind.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other questions I have written down here is just kind of like, Chancellor Palpatine, cruel or pragmatic? Honestly, I think the answer is both. He's both being cruel and pragmatic here, and it's just kind of well, to back up before I get to that, Mace Windu is being a leader in all of this. He's being true to the Force, and it's kind of a shame we didn't get this type of stuff prior to the Phantom Menace coming out to really ground who this character was. But because his role is really pretty minor in the Phantom Menace. It gets expanded in Attack of the Clones when we get to see him in battle in the arena on Geonosis, and then of course his biggest contribution to Revenge of the Sith is when he goes to the Senate offices to try and arrest Palpatine, and then of course that leads to Anakin's downfall of all this. But he doesn't get the big leadership moments like he does in this episode and the prior episode. He doesn't get the big moments to kind of ground, be the embodiment of where the Jedi are grounded with the Force there, and recognizing the sanctity of life, and especially the uniqueness of this particular life when it is the last of its kind as far as they know. And can we really kill it just in the name of war? And what is war? War is death. It is attempting to enforce one political body's will on another by killing its citizens until they submit. And so there is a bit of perversity to all of this, and Mace sees it. Obi-Wan sees it and has the solution to all this, which we'll get to another point here. But yeah, so the other point of this, as I kind of alluded to, is Chancellor Palpatine. And of course, we know that he's Darth Plagueis, but through much of season 1, he is the leader. He just comes off as the leader of the Republic. But as you so eloquently put it, the cracks are starting to show here that this isn't such a great guy here. But what else did you think about him and his portrayal in this episode?
As far as Palpatine goes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he, for the most part, like you said, he's trying to be pragmatic, or he's trying to show his pragmatism. And he even sells it to Anakin because, when he and Padme kind of walk a little bit aside, and Padme's like, "You don't honestly believe what he's saying, do you?" He's like, "Well, no, but he does have a point."
Right.
So there's always that part of Palpatine that he's able to explain things away in such a way that it makes you want to believe it. And of course, Anakin trusts Palpatine in that way. But Palpatine is, I think he's just being selfish. He sees this Zillo Beast as a way to openly control something and utilize its resources, just like he's doing in the future on different planets. I mean, he goes obviously from planet to planet, just consuming whatever resources are there, whether that be kyber crystals or whether it be, whatever. And so, as you said, we're starting to see the cracks in this, kindly old facade of the Chancellor and seeing what he's really made out of. I mean, even the Zillo Beast looks at him with that one eye.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I see into your soul," kind of thing.
Right. Watching this episode now, we have the benefit of things like The Rise of Skywalker. And I remember when we were watching the Zillo Beast episode in the Bad Batch, or a couple episodes there, I suppose, that, we had these discussions like, well, why was Palpatine so interested? And we know that there was all these cloning efforts that he was into to create a clone of himself. And so, even then, I can't completely dismiss that as like part of his motivation, that there's this powerful beast. Maybe there's something about its DNA that will help his own project on Exegol. That, not saying that he's looking for like impenetrable hide or anything like that, but this creature that has got so many abilities, such strength there, and there's something to it that might help, stabilize the clones that he's been trying to create, make them more resilient and able to accept his force presence should it come to that. But yeah, backing up what you said, what is the rush? Do you really think that you're going to crack the secret of this creature's, the strength of its scales, the strength of its hide that quickly that you could then put it in production and use it to outfit your clone troopers and your ships and win the war? That seems like an incredibly big order. And I think there really is something to the cruelty of all this. And I think you said it very well. He's doing this because he can control it. This is a gigantic, powerful monster, and he's exerting his will over it to the point where, they've got the whole thing tethered down at the that science academy there in Coruscant. And he shows up on a floating platform, is looking, it's like, such a magnificent beast. Oh, you can't get through the scales? Okay, kill it.
Right.
I mean, who does
Yeah.
that? He gave the project to Dr. Bowl, but now that he's there, like rubbing it in the creature's face, that you're worth more to me dead than alive.
Right. And you could tell Dr. Bowl was just at first totally, what? Wait. And then she says, of course, at your pleasure, sir, kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, with Palpatine, I mean, he puts it so well when he says, oh, the sooner we can unlock the secrets, the sooner we can end this terrible war. And this is for military gain. But you're absolutely right when you said, how's he going to do this so fast? And the fact, though, that the Zillo Beast, once it did get free, it made a beeline to try to find Palpatine. You know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't just rampaging willy-nilly. I mean, it kind of was, but it was definitely making that like, I'm coming to get you, Papa Palpatine.
But you've alluded to the whole discussion between Palpatine, Padme, and Anakin. And I absolutely love that this was Obi-Wan's idea. Because, the Zillo Beast gets brought to Coruscant. It's getting shuttled off to this science center to be studied, and they can't get through to the Chancellor. And so you've got Mace Windu and Obi-Wan meeting at the Jedi Temple, and Obi-Wan's like, well, maybe there's another approach. And so he goes to the Senate and he talks to Padme. And of course, she's appalled by all this. Like, really, we're going to cause the extinction of a species simply for this military gain, when she's already against the war to begin with. And you can tell when they're in the middle of this conversation, Anakin shows up and he's like, not that I'm not happy to see you, Senator, but I was only expecting to run into Obi-Wan in this. I really got the feeling that he kind of resented that Padme was brought into this. But what was your thought?
No, I'm with you. And I think that's a great observation, honestly, because, yeah, I mean, of course, Anakin's always going to love to see Padme no matter what. But then again, he knows Padme. He knows what her stand on this is going to be. And honestly, he even tells her straight out, like, you haven't seen what this thing can do. I think he's a little bit afraid for, of course, for her safety. And now she's being brought into this, and he's sort of playing coy about it and saying, yeah, okay, not that I don't love seeing you, but, it's like, all right, Obi-Wan, what the heck did you just do? But of course,
Yeah.
Padme is like the moral compass in all this thing, in a lot of ways.
Right. And the other thing is that if there's one thing that Anakin doesn't like to do, it's argue with Padme or disagree with the Chancellor in this. And the Chancellor's made a decision, and and the Chancellor has been Anakin's friend, much longer than Anakin and Padme have been a couple in all of this. And so there's very much a bit of a divided loyalty in all of this. As much as he has an attachment to Padme, there is this, well, the guy I respect the most thinks this is a good idea, and this what he wants. Even though I might disagree with him a little, who am I to tell him no? When it comes down to it? And just, this, But the way he's trying to tap dance around Padme's objections and still support the Chancellor is, yeah, I think we've all been there, not this specific situation where we're caught between two people that we care about quite a bit that are having a disagreement. And it is supremely uncomfortable. But I mean, for me, it's just kind of you're going to cause the extinction of a species for something we don't even know is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a big step. It's just hard for me to even think about siding with Palpatine on this one.
Oh, for sure. And another thing that strikes me too about the whole way that Anakin responds to this particular situation, and I've noticed this quite a bit in the Clone Wars, is that Anakin almost seems, and I mentioned this before, almost more mature during the Clone Wars than he does when we see him in Revenge of the Sith in
By
a
a
lot of
mile.
ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, and and a lot of times I try to sort of write that off as well. It was a very different set of circumstances. And especially once Anakin found out he was going to be a father, the game changed and then everything started just unfolding in crazy ways. And so it's a completely different situation. But yet he is the Jedi he's supposed to be in the Clone Wars. And it's unfortunate that he slides so much. Obviously, that's the point, that he slides so much further backwards in Revenge of the
Mhm.
Sith. But you just hate to see it because this is prime Anakin right here, honestly.
Yeah. I wonder if one of the subtext of all this is, sure, Palpatine was interested in destroying the Zillo Beast, harvesting its DNA and using it for research and development and possibly outfitting his army at some point. But okay, so I'm actually at 2 points. It's not in his best interest to actually have this war end sooner rather than later. The whole point of the war is to put the galaxy in a place where he can subjugate it by turning the Republic into an empire. But before
Mhm.
he can do that, he needs to beat both down the Separatists and the Republic. So he's not actually interested in a quick resolution to this war. But he is interested in exerting control over Anakin, the chosen one. And this is kind of an exercise in that, is it not? I mean, it's like, there's Padme. He already knows that Anakin and Padme are married in this. That's something that Palpatine figured out early. How, we don't know exactly, but he knows. And here he is kind of pitting Anakin against her, exercising some control over this aspect of the relationship.
Mhm.
Does that
No,
make
I
sense? What do you
it
think?
does. No, and I think you nailed it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's, so that we kind of got into the deeper points on this, but then the Zillo Beast does get out. It does create a lot of destruction here on Coruscant. And, when they decide that they aren't going to be able to get the scales off, that's when they go ahead and our Chancellor goes ahead and says that, well, we're going to kill it and harvest its DNA and we'll go about it that way. And, or, maybe remove the scales that way and figure it out. And it seems like an easy notion. Oh yeah, they used the Malastarian fuel to kill this thing in the past. That's what they're going to do. So she turns it into a toxin. And of course, it doesn't work fast enough. And the Zillo Beast gets away. And this is kind of like where the King Kong stuff comes in. It's catching aircraft out of the air, like Kong did with the planes
Right.
that are attacking
Mhm.
him and destroying it. And then, climbing up the sides of buildings and smashing things that are in a way, not even necessarily intending to cause as much damage to everything. It's got very specific targets, the things that are attempting to hurt it. It, of course, is fighting against very intentionally, but it also tramples a lot of people. There's a
Yes.
lot of death off screen in this episode. Did you notice
Oh,
that?
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's just showcasing just that little bit where there's one scene where you hear people screaming, and then you see it from the Zillo Beast perspective as you're looking up, and the
Mhm.
people are just falling down towards the perspective of where, animation wise, like the camera would be. But yeah, that there's tons of destruction and death. And all I could think to myself is, I wonder how long it took them to rebuild all of that because, I mean, obviously there wasn't that many years between this and Revenge of the Sith and then Andor. So, when did all of this happen? But ironically, it's where the beast was kept. I'm assuming that was in the works because that's where Dooku had his little sanctuary, if you will, that he met Palpatine at the end of Attack of the Clones. That was in the part of Coruscant called the Works. So I
Yeah.
just remember seeing all those smokestacks and everything. So it had to go a pretty long way. So I don't know if it was, coming in from obviously the outskirts of Coruscant, but again, it made a beeline straight towards the Senate building.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that was the works or not. The episode guide does describe a very specific scientific building that the Republic
Okay.
had that it was being
Mhm.
held in.
Oh,
And
you
then, of
did say
course,
that.
yeah, and then they had all the clone tanks and everything set up outside of it. And that it does kind of beg the question is like, okay, so did the Zillo Beast just smell where Palpatine was? Because he very much had his sights set on him. Of course, he saw the billboard that had Palpatine, which is giving the same address that we saw so many episodes ago, the lightsaber lost, where the Palpatine's on the screen saying that he does not believe there's any plot by the Jedi to prolong the war, et cetera, when it's in fact Palpatine that's trying to prolong the war.
That's an
It's
interesting trivia piece.
yeah, exact same speech, but then,
Wow.
the Zillo Beast charges right through that, which was really cool scene. That poor billboard, I mean, it gets knocked sideways in the Lightsaber Lost episode and just gets completely smashed in this one. And then, but you alluded to it earlier when Zillo Beast gets to the Senate building and just happens to look through the right window, and there's that gigantic green eye. It was like Godzilla. There's a very
Yeah.
similar image from that 90s version of Godzilla with Matthew Broderick in it, which was fair. But that is going on, and then they make their escape there. Look, they evacuate to the underlevels and stuff like that, but I'm not sure that was the smartest escape plan. When it came down to it, that was the best they could do under the circumstances.
Right?
Wouldn't be like further and deeper into the building have been better, because that's not like a small building that it can just like smash with a single blow, if you know what I'm saying.
No, exactly. And Anakin was, to his credit, very calm, like, "Can we please get to the lower levels now?"
Yeah,
But, you
yeah.
know,
But I did enjoy the pursuit there because the Zillo Beast does capture that little ship, and Ayla Secura gets an appearance in this
yeah.
episode. No lines that I can remember. She didn't get any lines, do you? Did she?
I think she might have had one,
Okay. Well, it was
but
very
that was
quick,
it.
whatever it
Yes.
was. But the one of the absolute highlights are when she and Yoda jumped out of their gunship up on the Zillo Beast's back as a way to try and distract it while the Chancellor, Anakin, and Padme are attempting to get away.
Mhm. Yes, and seeing their lightsabers going at it, that was cool.
Yeah, it was just good to see her in action again.
Oh, for sure.
She needed more screen time, and the so many of the Jedi did. Sassy Teen, her,
Yeah.
Kit Fisto. I mean, a lot of the Jedi got their feature episode, and then were just kind of side characters a lot of time
Mhm.
after that.
Mhm.
But she definitely should have had more than that.
Yeah,
Luminara, I
it's
think,
great
is
to
like
see
one of the
her.
most prolific Jedi that's not named Anakin, Obi-Wan, or Ahsoka that I
Yes,
can
so
think of.
true.
Right.
Good call.
And then, of course, they end up killing the thing with the gas, and they get it surrounded, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it is tragic. It's not the King Kong death. He gets shot so many times he falls off the building and dies. But I don't know. I kind of felt like the little moral here that we were too hasty. Its sacrifice shall not be in vain. Well, I've learned a lesson from this type of a thing. That was almost a little too neat. I don't know. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it should have gone, but what did you think about that?
Oh, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's just for me, it's just, again, illustrating Palpatine's obsession with exploiting the ability to do things just because he can. And also, I think, too, he's got this kind of pattern of super weapons. You know what I mean? I mean, you look at things like the Death Star, obviously, is a super weapon. And then cloning in and of itself is kind of like a biological super weapon. And then the Zillo Beast represents another opportunity to have a super weapon.
Yeah. I don't know exactly. I mean, in Star Wars, they do votes of no confidence. That's how they got rid of Valorum, and that's how Palpatine rose to power. But if there wasn't a big war going on here, this would seem to me like a prime reason to call for a vote of no confidence in Palpatine's leadership. You brought a gigantic monster to this planet. How many people died? How much destruction did it cause? In the end, you gained nothing for the war effort out of all of this. And you know, he gets on his high horse with Anakin and Padme in that conversation about, you know, I have this duty to do everything I can to end the war and to help give our soldiers that are fighting us the best protection possible. Well, it's the old Jurassic Park thing. You were so busy trying to decide if you could do a thing, you didn't stop and think whether you should.
Yes. Good call.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just look, we're discussing this story in a very, very large context beyond what was shown in the 22 minutes of story time, you know, not including the credits here of this. And we realize that they're dealing with that type of a constraint, but there really should have been more consequences for Palpatine from the Republic here. But hey,
100%.
he was just that popular leader, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. He was.
Well, I think we've got through most of my notes. Was there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to bring up before we wrap it up?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I wish that we would have seen a little bit more of the Zillo Beast, just, sprinkled in here and there, because we didn't hear anything about it until finally we got that, full circle moment, of course, in the Bad Batch and I went back and watched that Metamorphosis episode too, just so that I could remember how that all came full circle. And then, from there, but it's a great bit of, again, like you just said, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Mm-hmm.
And those moral and ethical dilemmas that go along with that.
Right. Well, speaking of that episode of the Bad Batch, I'm going to try and remember to rebroadcast those after this episode.
Nice.
So, because it seems like the perfect time to do it.
Yes.
Nice little trilogy. But yeah, definitely go check out those episodes of the Bad Batch that follow this, and then check out the conversation, if I in fact remember to get that done. I'm going to try. We'll see what happens.
I'll remind you. How's that?
That sounds good. See if it fits into my schedule. There's a lot to do. He just recorded a really long episode talking about the High Republic. So
yes.
A lot of editing to do over the next few days. Okay. Well, enough of that. I want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of the Clone Wars. We hope you've enjoyed hearing us talk about the Zillo Beast. And if you want to hear what we have to say about the next episode of the Clone Wars and our rewatch, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. You know how to do that. You're a podcast listener, and I'm sure you've listened to lots of shows. And then once you've done that, we would love it if you could go ahead and rate, review the show, especially if you get that done on Apple Podcasts. It's the number one thing that helps others discover the show. And of course, if you want to find our entire back catalog of shows, including all of our discussions of the Clone Wars so far, one of the best places to do that beyond your podcatcher is retrozap.com, which is the home of Podcast Stardust and has been for going on 6 years. So, yeah. But Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what those social media contacts are one more time and where else we can be found online?
You got it, Dennis. We are so easy to find. We are at Podcast Stardust on all of your socials, including Facebook and Instagram. We also have our Pinterest boards with all kinds of fun things for everything Star Wars. And then our 2 YouTube outlets, which include both YouTube and YouTube Music. So head over to both of those, add those to your playlists, subscribe, share those out, and let us know what you thought of this episode of The Clone Wars and any other of our episodes that you've listened to. And hopefully that's been a lot. And from there, you can also hit us up on our TeePublic link that is in our show notes. So if you need some new Podcast Artist swag or a new coffee mug or anything in between, home goods, there's tons and tons of different things over there. And we do have 7 different show logos available to choose from. Once again, that link is in our show notes.
Okay, upcoming on the show on Wednesday, we will have our discussion of Trials of the Jedi, the last novel in the High Republic. And it's a good discussion. Make sure you're here for that. And then on Friday, we end the week like we do always with some news. And if there isn't enough news, then we will do something else fun. So tune in, find out what happens. So thanks for listening to episode 933 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be